Na, 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 na. Hello, ladies and gentlemen. Okay, I almost choked on my. Whoa! Do you guys hear that?
Hello, ladies and gentlemen.
Somebody doesn't have their stream muted.
That
John.
was probably me.
God, come on, John. You've only been doing this.
I got 14 computers in front of me, and they're all talking at the same time.
14 computers?
Well, not exactly 14. More like 4.
Okay. Well, okay.
But that feels like 14 to me.
It's okay. I used to do the whole exact same thing when I was on Honey Badger Radio. Anyways, hello, ladies and gentlemen. Sorry about that. Welcome to another edition of the Differently Wired Show. I'm your host, as always, your friendly neighborhood Simpsons kin, Maximilian Julius Derrat. Oh, wait, no, that's not right. Maximilian Danger Derrat. I'm sorry. I get those two mixed up. It's the problems of being a fictional character. And joining me as usual for this show is the guy that does all the work around here, John Tucker. John, how's it going?
Wonderful. Thank you, Max.
All right, good. Lovely weather we're having, I guess.
Fabulous weather here.
Yeah, I know. For the first time this year, we got into double-digit temperatures where I am, and it's glorious. I know it's sort of lame to just talk about how good the weather is, but you try to, take whatever positive influences that you can get. And what's so great about the springtime rolling around is just you feel a renewed sense of hope that you managed to get through the cold harshness of Canadian winter. And you're finally getting much of your needed energy back that's been missing the last few months. And you're ready to be productive all over again, or more productive than usual. Anyways. Let's do the usual house cleaning stuff before we get... Well, actually, I just want to see the people in the chat. Let's see who we got here. Got Hollowbreen, Joseph Kruger, Kearney Hussey. I'm going to hunt a moose. Yeah. Don't you mean mouse? Or are you just pronouncing it like Canadians would pronounce mouse? That was my attempt at humor. Okay. Project 3000, Alina DeHowler, Emerald Queen, Jesse Dahlman, Dave Barker, or JC Denton, as he probably wants to be called. How's everybody going? Doing in the chat there? Good to see you all joining us. Yeah, I guess everybody just say hi. You're on camera right now on Max Derrat's YouTube channel. Glad to have you all here. All right, so I pronounce it Mies. Well, are you from Sweden? I don't know. Anyways, let's go and do the usual house cleaning stuff. First of all, Facebook page, yada, yada, yada. Go like us there. Good people. We'll respond to your questions. We've been doing so pretty sufficiently to the people that have been sending us messages on Facebook asking for advice or help in regards to their AS or mental health related problems. And also, Discord. We have a Discord server. Gosh, how long have I had this server for? Probably like 2 months, I think. Something like that. In that time, we've gotten almost 250 members. So, yeah, if you guys want to go and be a part of a community filled with people that are like-minded like you, and I don't necessarily mean like-minded metaphorically, but literally, because you might have AS or mental health problems, go and check out my Discord server. It's been a very friendly place so far. Lots of nice people helping each other out with their issues and bonding over games and movies and tech and music and stuff like that. It's all really, really good and really friendly, so go check that out. Anyways, with that out of the way, let's dive right into our main topic. Now, who was the guy? Let me just go into my Discord server to figure out who it was that originally suggested this topic. It was... Where are you, buddy? Darn it. Who... I'm looking for it. Anyways, somebody recommended that, a lot of people have been saying they want to come on during the call-in segment of the show, but they're a little bit socially anxious about it, and they sort of use that to suggest us maybe talking about problems related to social anxiety. I'm sorry, whoever mentioned this, that I should do this topic. I can't find your name in the Discord server at the moment. I apologize. Anyways, so obviously, John, as I just try to get my train of thought back on track, I'll just ask you, obviously, social anxiety is pretty much universal for anybody that has AS. Um, I can't imagine you've had a client that hasn't had some form of an anxiety disorder, just because it seems to be so comorbid with any problem that somebody would come to you with. Like, what are some
It's
of the
it's very, very, very common.
yeah, so what are some of like the common trends that you see when people have talked to you about having social anxiety? Like, what are some of their greatest fears, and what patterns do you see in that?
Well, when you mentioned the topic social anxiety, I'm thinking what happens is there's two people in you. One is you who wants to do and say stuff, and the other is the judge watching you. Is this the right stuff? Is this going to make me look stupid? Am I going to make enemies? So after a while, and this is the wonderful irony of anxiety, is you don't know what it is you're afraid of anymore, because it can come over you in such a way that anything new or different, or even something that you should know about, is this tinge of darkness around it, or a kind of a, I don't know. I see in my mind a bunch of zid, like Z's, anxiety. You don't know exactly what's underneath it. So um, I do have clients that don't have a lot of anxiety,
Okay.
because there's a whole wide range of kinds of clients. And I have clients who look like they might have anxiety, but they're just introspective.
Mm.
However, when anxiety is strong, what happens is people will find ways to avoid stress, strain. They hide inside their comfort zone, and that may be their room or the basement or games or drugs or booze or something. Uh, so I do know, and I have had clients who, for instance, their parents would hire me and say, "Can you get so and so to leave his room?
Mm.
Ever? We're really worried. He's been in his room for 4 years, and we throw food in, and he sometimes eats it. I mean, it's not that bad. I'm exaggerating, but we do have cases where people are almost paralyzed and can't go out. So, yeah, I guess that's enough of me talking about that for the moment, and you can jump in.
Yeah,
Uh,
I guess it makes sense that there would be some people that don't necessarily have social anxiety problems. I just suppose I made that assumption because of the people that I speak to. You know, the people that have
mhm.
said, "Hey, I watched your videos and I really like to talk to you about something," whether it's with the emails that we get for this show or just general emails that I receive. Um, do I sound okay to you, John? Just very quickly.
It's very your signal is a bit rocky.
Okay, I'm just increasing the volume. Hopefully that, because I'm afraid I might be cutting out for some people. Anyways, yeah, I made that assumption just because a lot of people tend to come to me with issues regarding anxiety, how to overcome it, how to become more assertive and self-expressive, because they're very self-conscious about the fact that they don't necessarily have social skills because for the majority of their lives, well, when they were younger, they realized, okay, I'm not going to be able to get anywhere doing what normal people do, just being able to socialize because I don't get it. So I just put all my efforts towards building skills or fostering an interest. And that necessary socialization sort of gets left behind because of our natural predisposition to be socially awkward. Um, I think like I've been sort of marinating on what it is exactly that causes us to be socially anxious in the first place, specifically people with AS, but people that generally just have the mental health issue on its own. And for the most part, I'll just focus on what it's like for people that have AS because I can only really speak from that perspective, right? Because I have it. Um, the thing is, people who have AS tend to look at the world and its various problems and tribulations as a sort of math equation, as being able to treat it as something that they can analyze beforehand, analyze all the variables, and then tackle it efficiently. It's why it's a lot easier, you know, for people who have AS to get lost in books or movies or video games or I don't know, maybe a certain academic discipline because they realize, hey, I can excel at this better than most people. And it's because I tend to see patterns in the things that I read that other people don't, which helps me to understand the material better, thus making me better to take on certain fields of expertise, right? The difference between that and just basic socialization with other people is that every social encounter is completely random. All the variables are completely randomized, with the possible exception of the highs and goodbyes, because everybody sort of more or less greets each other the same, right? Hello, how are you doing? And then when the conversation goes beyond that, it's really hard to read what it is that other people want to talk to you about or just talk about in general. Especially on top of that, you have the problems that people with AS have when it comes to reading body language. And then because it's such a persistent realm of failure, people just sort of leave it all together because it's just a math equation that they can't really figure out. Does that sound reasonable? Does that make sense to you, John? Like what I just said?
Yeah, of course it does.
Okay.
Because it's difficult for some people to read a social cue, they're not sure. Did I say too much? Am I not saying enough? Am I? And so you create a kind of a nervousness about it. So I'm thinking we should move over to some bright parts of this, some like strategies to deal with various kinds of anxiety. So one of the things I'm thinking that you made me think of in the randomness of people going on is it's often in any social situation for any people talking. You learn this in government relations or marketing processes, is if you're not sure of what to do, listening is often smarter. Number one, it is regarded as respectful by the person who is talking that you are listening. So if you don't know what to say, maybe hanging back and not saying too much is okay to do, because it will tend to allow that other people to the other person or the other people to view you as being interested in what they're saying. So that warms up the conversation. So if in doubt and you got a choice, should I talk or listen? A polite listen is very often a safe thing to do. And then if it's possible, when you talk, to that person about what they just said, it is about what they just said rather than what's flowing through your brain. Now, when you've got really clever, wide open brains that hear a lot of stuff, there's lots of things flowing through your brain. So you try to focus on what they said. Focus on what they said and say, that's interesting. It reminds me of, and then you can talk about what it reminds you of, but it's kind of rooted in what they said. This is like, I know, kindergarten stuff, but it really helps if you somehow or another can listen more than speak. That's a very basic, small point, but probably okay for a lot of people who have social anxiety.
Well, I'll tell you one thing. In my experience throughout my life, even prior to me developing decent social skills, a lot of people told me, even when I was in high school and I was particularly socially awkward, that I was a good listener, right? Because I'd just be sitting there and I'd be listening to what they had to say, and I would respond to the problem that they've been having, and trying to treat it as if it's something like a problem where you can just throw a whole bunch of potential solutions at it. And just by doing that, even if the person that you're talking to isn't very hopeful or very optimistic about any solution, just the fact that you're there listening to them and showing intent to help them and a desire to help them, that alone is enough to bring them out of their funk, and they'll actually come back to you for help in the future, and really appreciate your friendship. I'll sort of speak for myself when it comes to my problems with social awkwardness, social anxiety, and having trouble expressing myself in the past. As I was doing notes for the show, I kind of realized that what I did that helped me out could sort of be summarized in just one sentence. And it's a commonly used phrase, so it might sound a bit cliche, but just follow me here. Actions speak louder than words, right? So if people with AS have trouble organizing words and sentences and knowing how to respond to people in common conversation, one way that you can sort of be more assertive and show that your personhood is more valuable than just the words that come out of your mouth is by demonstrating your talents outside of social situations. So, for example, when I was in school, high school in particular, or even middle school, I found ways where I can sort of interact with people outside of the boundaries of normal conversation. What I did in middle school, so that'd be grades 6, 7, and 8, from when I was 11 to 13 years old, I took a liking to doing magic tricks. And what I found helped me in doing that is I would go up to random people, whether it's my professors or my peers, and say, "Hey, can I try this magic trick on you?" And they would let me do it. They're more than happy to and entertain my company for just a minute or two. And just by doing that, just being able to perform something successfully, it really boosted my self-esteem and made me realize, okay, I can do this despite my natural quirks. And when I went into high school, I sort of carried that ethic over. Instead of doing magic, though, it became music. Sort of the thing that people tend to identify me with when I was in high school was the fact that I always carried a guitar anywhere I went. And instead of striking up conversations with people, I just pull out my guitar, and then naturally people would gravitate over to me and say, "Hey, can you play this or can you play that?" And I just build up my repertoire so that the more times people asked me if I could play a song, I could. And then conversations would sort of go beyond that because people would just be sort of fascinated with what it's like playing the guitar, what my particularly favorite bands are. Then, those conversations would spur off into my favorite music or even my favorite movies or my favorite games, depending on what types of people that I talk to. So those are just a couple of examples of ways that you can be assertive. Now, naturally, because not everybody's going to be musically inclined, you have to sort of experiment with things that work best for you. So maybe, let's say you're very much into computers, which doesn't necessarily indicate that you'd be particularly good at the various ways. What's the terminology? The magic of communication, the various different ways that you can be socially desirable. One thing that you can do is, if you're particularly good at constructing computers or you're good at coding, you can offer your services to people. Like maybe you can go over to somebody's house, if somebody that if they need help setting up their computer or clearing off a virus. I'm just sort of thinking off the top of my head with this particular example because I just came up with it. And once you do that, you can sort of ask them about their history with computers, what they do know, what they don't know, what their internet searching habits are, and then see if that carries over into another conversation of some sorts, especially if there's somebody that you know, right? It's just, you got to find that hook of some sorts so that you don't really continuously focus on whether or not you're going to fail a particular social situation. Because once you sort of have that in with somebody, then you sort of find yourself just melting into the conversation. You stop thinking about how things could potentially go wrong. Now, those are just a couple of examples. John, do you have any other ideas like that?
You made me think of the value of props. So your guitar was a prop. Your magic trick was a prop. It's something that focused the attention of people around you on a thing that wasn't you.
Exactly.
So they were focusing on the guitar, and that gave you a conversation starter that you were comfortable with. Now, so let's broaden that out a bit. You maybe person X doesn't play guitar, they don't do tricks, they know nothing about computers, they don't know any of that. Maybe all they can do is walk the dog, but the dog is then the prop.
Yeah.
I mean, it's
absolutely.
So then the dog helps provide a bridge to conversation. You're walking down the road, somebody says, "Oh, what a cute dog. Oh, who owns that dog? How old is that dog?" So that prop is a very simple prop. You don't have to be expert. And who knows how many other things people might use as that, but that's what you made me think of. The other thing is, you don't have a dog, you don't have a computer, you don't have a whatever. You can go to places where things are happening you like. And what keeps bubbling up in my mind is improvisation.
Mm.
For some reason, improvisation seems to work for people who are socially anxious in many cases, because what happens is, remember I said at the beginning of the show, when you're awkward or socially anxious, there's two of you and the one judging you. When you go to the improvisation part, it's you and you performing.
Mm-hmm.
So now you can forget the judge because you're living in the moment, in the flow. You talked about kind of a flow of the thing. So when you're doing improvisation, you get inside that character. Now you're totally acting, but it's really you.
Yeah. And
so you no longer have to judge yourself, because that's who you're making this character.
Right. And thank you for bringing up improvisation, because it sort of dovetails into something that I've recommended a lot in our past episodes that people should do. One thing that I've always recommended is that people who have AS and are socially anxious is that they take drama classes. And it's sort of the reason why, one of the main reasons why, is in direct relation with what you just said about improvisation. When you take on a character and you're performing, there are certain social variables that are present that you can take control of that you can't take control of with a regular conversation. This is why, my dad, around the time that I was originally diagnosed with AS, he had a hard time believing that I had AS, because he's seen me be on stage in front of nearly 1,000 people. This goes back to when I was in high school. I used to perform in front of my school, and we have a really large theater. And I love doing it because when I was in front of lots of people, there are things that I can do. I can be sort of in control of what people see, and people are bearing witness to my talents rather than my quirks. And you just can't get that with a regular conversation. And he had a hard time believing that, because he feels like, well, if anxiety is a comorbid symptom of AS, how is it that you're able to get up in front of a whole bunch of people and do that? And that's the best way I can explain it. Does that, what I just said, make sense to you, John?
Sure it does. And the problem with the so-called neurotypical thinking is that they're taking a situation that is emotional, laden with worry, and trying to stamp reason onto it. Oh, if you could do this, how come you can't do that? Well, what that does, if you're not neurotypical, is it makes you retreat. Because actually, that's not a question. That's actually an attack.
Oh, yes, it is.
That's an attack. So that is a kind of an assault on your ego, and it's an assault on your integrity. So now you have to defend yourself. So you can no longer even be rational about it, because you've gone into a different area. But the beauty of the improvisation and the drama class is it allows you to live in a place of possibility, and rather than judgment. And it's the judgment that's the devil for folks who are differently wired.
Yeah, it's one of the main reasons why, instead of getting into conversations about my problems or things that might have been bugging me when I was younger, I would just consistently lie to my parents, because it's easier to lie and sort of get out of tough conversations that might put me into a meltdown prone state of mind. It's easier to lie than do that. And that's the main reason why, up until recently, I had a very difficult issue with my parents when it came to trust, because I would always be trying to avoid those situations where they would ask those judgment-like questions, and then it would sort of put my brain into this riled up state where I just had to sort of clench my fists and hang on and prevent myself from going crazy. And that's the end of my sentence.
Well, I'm often, I say on a every few days basis, talking to parents about them not attacking. And look, if you don't want your daughter or son to lie to you, stop interrogating. This is not the Salem witch trials. This is not the Spanish Inquisition. You do not have to talk to your 19-year-old and say, "Did you get your homework done? Did you do this? This scattergun approach of questions really drives trust out the window. So what I tell parents now, I say, I am going to teach your son or daughter to lie because that's the only way they can escape the misery you're putting them through. I'm going to tell them to lie because they got to avoid the problem. And they get all upset, and I don't care.
Well, okay, and well, I would sort of say in response to that, it's like, well, if you don't like that, then create a scenario, an ideal living environment where they won't constantly need to lie to you,
Exactly.
right? Because, like,
The easiest thing to do, like the example I often use is the 12-year-old boy comes home. Mom says, have you got your homework done? That's an attack. That's actually not a question. So what I say to parents, try to frame it this way. Hey, Joey, when you run into problems with your homework, I'm here for you. And
yes,
back off.
yeah,
Back
absolutely,
off.
because
Leave it alone.
yeah, that's a great example because, like, normally, yeah, that's what my parents would normally ask me. And most of the time, my homework would not be done, but I would get it done eventually. But I would say, yeah, I got it done just because I wouldn't have to answer the barrage of questions like, well, why haven't you gotten it done? Are you going upstairs to play video games? You know, if you can go upstairs and play video games, that means you're going to be falling back in your academics. And if you fall back in your academics, then that means you're not going to have a very bright future. And then you'll be living at home with me
And
for the
you won't
rest of
have
your
a
life.
responsible life. And when you die and go to heaven, what have you done? It goes
Exactly.
on and on.
It's a constant existential crisis. So those are a
Yeah.
couple of ways that we figured that you guys can sort of begin the process towards overcoming social anxiety. Now, like we said, it's a very individual thing. Obviously, not everybody will be like me. They'll be musically or cinematically inclined, I suppose, because I love music and movies. So if you have specific situations in your life that you want to talk to us about, one way that you can do that, and here's the segue, is by emailing us anytime using the email that you see on screen right now, which is maxderrat@yahoo.ca. And when you do that, we'll be putting you inside the mailbag segment. Now, the whole point of the mailbag segment is that we take emails from anybody that listens to the show. We sort of discuss their problems openly, try to give them some advice, provide them some resources so that they might overcome AS related issues or mental health related issues. And also, one other thing, if you guys want to be a part of the live show and ask a question right away so that we could possibly answer it during this show, use the hashtag that you see on screen right now on Twitter, hashtag differently wired. And that way we'll save some time at the end of the show to try and answer those questions. Although, you know, sometimes the show goes a little bit over long and we don't have time to get to all the Twitter questions. So if you want to guarantee that your question gets answered, please use the super chat function that you see in the chat below. By doing that, it helps support this channel, helps support the show, and helps begin our quest towards world domination.
Of course.
Of course. In case you guys didn't know, that's the primary goal. And if you don't like it, too bad. Anyways, let's go over to the very first email. And this email comes to us from Zachary Mady. Now, very first, off the bat, I got to apologize to Zachary because his email, for whatever reason, got sent to my junk mail inbox. So he's been waiting ever since February 11th to have his question answered. So I want to apologize for that, dude. I don't know why that happened, but here we are answering it right now. Hopefully you stuck with us. Let's read it. Hi, Max. First off, I'd like to thank you for making the Truth About Asperger's videos. I could pretty much relate to almost all of them. Well, thanks so much for watching them, dude. I always wanted to do a video discussing my problems with AS, but can never find the motivation to do it. I was diagnosed with Asperger's at the age of 7 after showing some clear symptoms such as obsessive interests and inability to interact with others, etc. The video I could relate the most to was the School Nightmares video. From second grade to 3 years of college, it was a nightmare for me. School was never for me. I was teased relentlessly that it really damaged my self-esteem and made it hard for me to trust people. Yeah, tell me about it, dude. I never had the courage to even talk to girls until I was a junior in high school. My teachers never knew how to handle kids in the morning. It was worse in high school. In some of my classes, there would be days that we would do nothing because the teacher is arguing with the class clown for 40 minutes. This would happen more often in the special ed classes. Besides being a part of the varsity basketball team for all 4 years of high school, I got to meet some awesome people from that. High school was a complete nightmare for me. I was able to make friends, though. I still keep in touch with a few people from school. After high school, I went into this deep depression and anxiety. I did not know what I was going to be. I feel like I'm the only person with AS that likes sports. I could not decide if I wanted to be a personal trainer or work in the fire department. I went with excuse you. I went with personal training, not the best thing to do when you are socially awkward, have a fear of talking in front of people, and you have the same tough professor that is always calling you in class when you don't know the answer. I spent 3 years at a community college. I spent most of my days, and still do, wishing that I could have tried harder in grade school to put me in a better position in life. I stopped taking classes last spring because if I continued, I think I would not be here right now. My anxiety and autism was almost making me insane. Now on to drugs. In the second I thought he said he about to say that he did drugs in the second grade. I was like, "What?" I kind of want to say that's hardcore, but I don't want to encourage that. Anyways, you get the point. Now on to drugs. In the second grade, before I got sent back to first grade in the middle of the year because I was struggling, my teacher went to put me on Ritalin. But that never happened because my awesome parents refused. But when I was 13, I started suffering from seizures. The doctors put me on oxcarbazepine. Oxcarbazepine? Yeah. They would make me drowsy, so even after I was seizure free after having it all through puberty. Hold on. I think I. Oh, I think I imported one of his questions. Hold on. I just got to make a bit of an on the fly edit here to the show because I forgot to include one final part of his question. Forgive me, guys. I'm bringing it up right now. La 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 la. Here we go. Here we go. I was still taking it until I was taken off of it after being seizure free for 5 years. Still going strong, but after I got off those meds, I could not sleep, and now I'm abusing sleeping pills. Now I'm 22, almost a year after giving up on school, and I'm struggling with what to do next. I still have nightmares about my past. I don't want to go back to school because it was never for me, but I'm happy I tried. I'm having a hard time finding employment. The local grocery store won't even hire me. I'm still waiting for an email from FedEx as a package handler. Excuse me, guys. I know I can do that job because the task is pretty much a routine for me. Do you and John have any advice for me? I'm sorry if this email was too long. I just want to let you know that you have helped me a lot. Along with Joe Rogan, friends, family, and ASMR videos. Thanks so much. Whew. Oh, I gotta take a breath. That was a lot of words. Zachary, thanks so much for sending that in. John, I just gotta get a sip of this water before my voice gives out.
Sure. This is a really interesting problem. This is a person, Zach is a person who's really struggled and tried hard, and now he's gotten a kind of a phobia about going back to school. But somehow or another, tied up with your future happiness, Zach, it is increasing your qualifications some way. Now, I'm thinking of online, I'm thinking of working private stuff, I'm thinking of apprenticeships. You don't necessarily have to give up on your dream. We just got to figure out a strategy to get around the ugly ways that you were trying to do it in or ugly environments. But so my mind is sort of turning to identifying like people who can work with you to figure out some strategies for getting into the career that you would rather like to do. Now, in terms of the training, I'm very impressed with the Peloton system whereby you get on a bike that's in your basement and you're watching a class in New York. And these classes might be going on, as you're there, or they might be recorded classes. So there's an awful lot of growing going on in personal training on YouTube. In the morning when I get up, I follow 2 or 3 YouTube exercise classes. I'm by myself. It's early hours. And
Richard
so I'm
Simmons.
wondering, yes, well, not exactly. But you know what I mean? There are ways to get at that field without having to do it in the anxiety producing way you've done it. So I think something along those lines might be very helpful.
Yeah, that's a. By the way, John, there's that ringing going on in the background. Again, I can't
Oh, okay. Let me see if I can find that.
Yeah. But I'll just sort of speak to that very quickly, what you were saying. Yeah, one sort of side effect of the fact that, as the world becomes even more interconnected through digital devices and social media, we tend to be drifting further apart when it comes to our actual physical presence near each other. One positive side effect of that is the fact that people like us, people that aren't necessarily socially inclined, can find ways to succeed using technology and the internet. So,
Hmm.
what John just suggested, that might be something, some sort of avenue that you might want to pursue. If you want to do like personal training on YouTube, there are lots and lots and lots of YouTube channels that do exactly that, and they're actually surprisingly successful. So that might be something that you want to try as a hobby. Naturally, I've been doing YouTube for like 4 years, and I'm still building an audience. So you might just want to treat it as a hobby. But considering that, you know, people with AS tend to pursue their hobbies to the fullest, I'm sure it wouldn't be that much of a problem for you if you just gave it a shot and see how far you actually went with it for a while. And on top of that, if you're looking for jobs at places like FedEx or a grocery store, one great way to sort of prove to these people that you can be a hard worker and can be reliable is by doing volunteer work, or building up a portfolio elsewhere. One thing that I've always sort of dreamed of doing is getting into reporting or the entertainment business, whether it's on radio or television or stuff like that. That's actually what I went to university for. You got to find ways to sort of build up, show on a resume what your skills are. And one of the things that I've done in respect to trying to break into this particular industry is by doing a YouTube channel. So if you could sort of think of auxiliary ways surrounding, athletics, personal training that you can put a onto a resume, that would be ideal. Like one thing I can think about the top of my head, like when I was a kid, I used to do Taekwondo. I hated it, but one great thing that I managed to get out of it is volunteer hours. I taught classes full of kids. I led all the kids that were in the dojo, and putting that on a resume, employers look at that and they see, hey, this kid did physically intensive work, and teaching a class full of kids, and being able to keep their attention for a while. That's got to show some sort of strength of character. So that's one thing that you can pursue. And again, like even if you have social anxiety problems, you can do, like we said, do it on the internet. Do you have anything else you want to add to that, John?
No, that seems pretty good.
Okay, let's move on to the next question. Feel free to email us back again in the future, Zachary, with any other questions. This next question comes to us from Riathor. And Riathor writes, hey Max, not sure how I'm supposed to word this. I'm 26 and I'm just now going through the process of getting a diagnosis for AS. My parents knew I had it since I was very young from being informed by school counselors and so forth. I was never made aware of this and received no help as a child or throughout adolescence and honestly feel somewhat betrayed. I made it through grade school just fine for the most part, but once high school came around, I started heavily... sorry, John. Yeah, I don't know if you realize this, but whenever you, I don't know if you're turning papers or something like that, the mic picks it up.
Okay.
So it's just I'm getting a complaint or two from a couple people that are watching. That's all. I was never made aware of this and received no help as a child or throughout adolescence and honestly feel somewhat betrayed. I made it through grade school just fine for the most part, but once high school came around, I started heavily into drugs and alcohol because of my inability to cope. I dropped out in grade 11 and have been making attempts to finish my high school education ever since, being about 3 to 4 credits away from doing so. Well, congratulations on that, dude. As in your video, Truth About Asperger's Syndrome School Nightmares, I share many of the same resentments against school and family alike. I guess where I'm getting at is the present where I'm at now. I've had a diagnosis from my psychiatrist for Asperger's syndrome, but it is not an official diagnosis, since it has to be received from a psychologist to be able to access services. I'm currently in the application... my God, my voice is giving out. I'm currently in the application process with Developmental Services Ontario, which it can be up to 8 to 10 weeks on the wait list, and I should be receiving an answer back soon. Through them, I'll be able to get my official diagnosis, help with school, employment funding, and so on. It's just been a really hard time this past 5 years since I've been clean and sober since July 2014. Well, congratulations on that, dude. Honestly, that's wonderful to hear. Since it feels like I'm stuck and haven't received any help with the disorder, I haven't been able to finish my education or hold a job for any longer than a few months. I guess what I'm asking is for some direction on what I should do until I get my official diagnosis and supports, because I felt pretty hopeless in knowing which direction my life is headed. Sometimes staying indoors for days at a time, depression, etc. Thanks for any input you may have. Yours truly, Ryan. Thanks so much for that, Ryan. Unfortunately, I feel like because your email resembles so much the one that Zachary sent in, we're giving you a lot of the same advice that we just gave to him. Let's see. Well, if you're looking for something to keep you busy until you get all that stuff sorted out, being at home, being inside your room, brooding and spinning about your situation, it's not going to be helpful for you. What you need to do is find some form of function where you could feel like you're contributing to your society and driving meaning from that. It's because through increased responsibility, you find the meaning that can sustain you despite the problems that you've been plagued with since birth. So, a couple ways that you can do that is by, well, one of them is obviously volunteer work if you don't really feel like you have any special talents, which would be hard to believe because a lot of the people that I know that I've met that have AS tend to be very talented. But yeah, just trying volunteer work. But aside from that, if you tend to have one or two hobbies that you enjoy to the fullest, find ways that you can exploit those. You know, there's never been a better time in history for people to monetize their creativity. And one way they can do that is by starting a YouTube channel, like I said. If you happen to be into art or photography, get an Instagram account, get a camera, start taking pictures and stuff like that. If you want to do mental health advocacy, even if you don't really feel like going into an office and interacting with people like at a hotline or something like that, you can start up a Facebook page and say, hey, I want to provide a safe place for people that have certain issues to come and talk with me or with other people so that they don't have to feel so alone. Those are just a couple of ideas off the top of my head. John, anything you want to add?
Yeah, sure. I think it sounds to me, Ryan, like your mind and body are not kind of in harmony with one another. You can try to power your body into place with your mind, but it's actually easier to do it the other way around. So in the interim, while you're waiting to get services lined up, I would suggest you do something that's intense and physical that you like to learn. It doesn't, I'm not going to suggest what it might be, but it can be something that is a skill development that's physical, that's primarily physical. And it could be martial arts, it could be any number of things, but I think something along that line. Now you've got time, you can kind of build strength in that physically oriented area, and that'll help your brain.
Yeah, exercise definitely helps in that regard.
Yeah.
I could tell you, having been heavily involved in physical activity the last month because I've been moving to a new place and lifting a whole bunch of heavy stuff. As miserable as it was in that period of time, I feel pretty great right now. I don't really have as many back problems as I have been having the last few months. Anyways, with that out of the way, I want to go into the sort of the penultimate segment of the show. I don't know if it'll be the final one because we still do have to get to some of the Twitter questions and potentially live questions. So let me just bring up this graphic. Where is it? Here we go. So at the very end of the show, we like to take calls from people that listen to our show live. You can be a part of this segment if you want by joining the Discord server and putting your name in the call-in segment text channel that you'll see on the left-hand screen once you join in Discord. We have a couple people waiting for us right now. One you'll recognize from a show, past show, whose name is Josh, who I will unmute now. And another one, we have a new guest who wishes to be referred to as Ratmus. You guys are unmuted. Say hello to the people at home.
Hello, people at home.
Hi there.
How's it going, guys?
Brilliant, thank you very much.
Brilliant.
Uh, okay.
Yeah. So, what did you guys want to talk about?
I'll let you, Ratmis, go first.
Okay. I would like to share some memories.
Okay.
Like when I was vocational school, there was the people, the students who asked me something, and I just answered it, and then they just said that you hadn't to be angry. Then I was confused. I I did think what did I said, but later I learned that it was me that I could I could not see my emotions correctly when
Hmm.
I speaking. For example, when I'm speaking and sounds too angry, I'm not probably angry.
Hmm. Oh yeah. Yeah. I've had problems with that in the past too, Radmus. Believe me. I recall a time when I was working at a in a warehouse back in 2014, and I said something completely innocuous. At least I thought it sounded completely innocuous and friendly to a coworker of mine. And I don't know, the way that I said it, he actually thought that I was being snide and demeaning to him, and he got really angry. So I totally feel your pain there.
It was so hard, but I still learning it.
Mm-hmm. Uh,
And I have to say,
yep.
greetings from Finland.
Finland, nice.
Yeah.
That's like one of the countries that all the people in the West sort of want to emulate, right?
I don't know.
Like there's a
Yeah,
yeah, kind of
yeah, I
like
think so.
yeah, a lot of the people in Canada, or a lot of the more progressively minded people, like to point to the Nordic countries like Sweden and Finland and Norway and say, "Hey, we should be like them." I don't know if there's any merit to that. I mean, like you guys seem to be doing pretty good. Uh, but anyways, um,
Maybe.
mm. Let me ask you, Ratmus, if it's not too rude to ask, how old are you?
It's okay. I'm 22.
Oh, okay. So, and this particular situation that you just described to us, how long ago was that?
What do you mean?
Uh, when you said that people were chiding you for speaking in a way that made you sound angry, how long ago was that?
Uh, few years or something.
Okay, so you sort of realized it and you've been working on it ever since.
Absolutely.
Okay, great. And how are things right now, generally speaking?
Uh, bit fine, but still learning
Okay.
it.
Well, that's really really good to hear. Yeah, unfortunately, it does take a while to sort of find, or well, to be conscious of the way that you present yourself to people, and it can be quite painful at first because, I mean, whoever wants to be self conscious about yourself every minute of every day, but
Mm,
once you get beyond that initial hurdle, there's a certain strength that comes along with that because once you're have that level of self consciousness, you tend to, I don't want to say higher intellect because that sounds um, arrogant, but you sort of know what I mean. It's just by having that level of self consciousness and being aware of what's going on around you, being able to cut through the BS when it comes to news stories or conversations that you might have with people. There's a value to that. At least I found
yeah.
that there's a value for that in my own life. So keep working at it, Ratmus. Just you're setting a good example when you do that, especially because when you do that, and people want to talk to you more, and people will be more enlightened by your company. At least that's what I found in my own life and with other people that I've talked to that have had similar problems as you.
Yeah.
Yep. Um,
Being Asperger, being Asperger is sometimes hard, but still learning.
yeah. And there's a certain power to having Asperger's from time to time. It's hard to realize it in certain moments, especially when you're feeling a great deal of pain, because it sort of clouds your better judgment. But it is a superpower in some ways. Josh, did you sort of want to jump in with something?
Yeah, well, I kind of wanted to, I guess you might say, present myself as living proof that social anxiety can be, well, overcome. Because,
Perfect.
yeah, well, about what? 3 years? Yeah, 3 years ago, call it thereabouts. Winter of 2015 coming into 2016 time. Basically, throughout the whole of 2015 for me was, was it Annus Horribilis? Horrible year in Latin. It was horrible, and essentially throughout that year I just got more and more and more and more and more withdrew. But so that way, by the winter of it, I couldn't even leave my own room without seeing another human being and feeling like I was about to die of heart attacks.
Yeah.
That whole feeling. And then round about February time of 2016, it was like, what on earth am I doing? Like, how can I? As I said, I'm just trying to think of the best way that I can, verbalize this.
Yeah, take your time, dude.
Yeah. I was realizing the absolute hell that I was creating for myself. Because, well, if you've ever read Dante's Inferno, then you'll know that all those who go into hell do so voluntarily, and I do think that I am responsible for creating that environment. And, obviously, if I can create it, then I can get myself out of it. That's the mentality that I had.
Yeah, it sort of goes, what you just said there, it sort of goes back to the old Judaistic, is that the right word? Judaistic? From the Jewish religion.
Judeo, I believe.
Yeah, the Judeo Principle. One of the most widely held principles in that particular religion is that if something is going wrong in your life, what you should do is examine your own actions and how they've accumulated in the past and determine whether or not the problem that you have right now is a result of choices you made in the past. Right?
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah, for me, I don't want to make this analogy due to the sheer, scale of things, but I guess in many ways it was a little bit like a miniaturized Solzhenitsyn in the Gulag, very much miniaturized, going over my life with a fine-tooth comb, as it were, and then realizing, right, I got myself into this, I can get myself out, and 3 years, 3 years on, went to music uni, obviously, studied music, and the fact that I'm, writing, following my passion, which is one of the things that I negated, and I think that was one of the things that contributed to my anxiety, because my talent wasn't being utilized. Well, I say talent, 99% perspiration. The fact that I'm now doing that for me is an absolute miracle, But either way, I'm, to anyone who is watching, and is suffering from social anxiety, I would say, if, going back to your magic tricks, if you have a talent, utilize it. That is probably, for me, that is the single best cure that there is. And, going back to the YouTube thing that you mentioned, that's something that I've been contemplating, because one of my other passions is collecting vinyl records. So I may, 90 of them. So I may as well do a review of them. That's about, so, if only I can combat my camera shyness. Thank you very much, Mr. Orwell.
Well, one thing I'd like to say that's wonderful about your presentation, Josh, is that you've set aside blame and taken up responsibility, and therefore you're taking ownership and therefore directing your life. So you're not focused so much, oh, too bad I couldn't do this, or what's wrong with me. You're saying, okay, what can I do to make this better? So when you do that, your life starts to become your own.
Yeah. There's a lot of people whenever it comes to. I sort of want to approach what I'm about to say carefully because I don't want to offend anybody. Uh, but a lot of times, people who have a lot of problems. How can I put this? They like to exclusively put that down to random chance and factors out of their control. Now, there are some times where that's actually true, where life can be random and tragic and you don't have any control over it. But the fact of the matter is that there's a lot of things in your life that you can control. And when you take on the responsibility for things that you can control, and you work actively at it and derive meaning from it, then the fact that life can be random and tragic suddenly doesn't bog you down as much as it used to. And
Right.
one of the things, like Josh just sort of took the words out of my mouth, that you can do to overcome this, and this sort of goes back to what I was saying about AS being a superpower, is that people with AS tend to focus on one or two things of interest, and through that, they tend to rise above the mediocre masses. In Josh's case, it's music. In my case, it tends to be the fact that I had the gift of the silver tongue. No, I'm kidding, but you get the point. Anyways, but yeah,
I can't deny that.
well, I see. I love my fans. That not only
Well,
are they
you
kind.
can also interject as
Yep, yep.
well with regards to if it hasn't already been made apparent, even though I live in Manchester, I speak with a bit of an RP accent. You see pronunciation, BBC accent. That was because at the age of 2, they're about infancy, whereas normal people start talking. I was pretty much stunned into silence, so I had to go in for speech therapy, and what you hear is the result of that. So,
Oh, so that's why you sound so articulate and like one of the guys over at walkculture.com. I don't know if you get that reference.
chap.
Yeah.
Anyway, I have a bowler hat to polish and a cup of Earl Grey to make. I don't even drink Earl Grey, in all honesty, anymore at least.
Honestly, although hold on a second. Do you know what walkculture.com is?
I believe it's just one of these, clickbaity websites. I'm honestly a bit cynical with respect to that.
Sure. I watch some of their top 10 videos from time to time, and my God, you sound so much like one of the guys there, the guys that reads those lists. It's sort of driving me nuts because I feel like you are one of them because the resemblance is so uncanny.
Goodness, well, it's nice. Well, I do not really know precisely what to make of that.
Well, dude, let me put it to you this way: if you're camera shy, maybe take what I just said as some sort of motivating factor. Like, if you want to perform music or talk about music online, maybe one thing that you can do is create a YouTube channel where you can do both. I mean, if you have the voice for it, and I'm sure you have the talent for it, maybe you can pursue
And
that.
the face for radio.
And the face for radio. Well, I don't know about that. I haven't seen your face. I'm sure you're.
Well,
I'm sure you're delightfully handsome. But anyways.
Yeah, I mean that mop of hair certainly it certainly adds to the charm.
Oh yeah, that's right. Yeah, I keep forgetting to look at the Discord avatars. Well, I can't really see your face unless you show it. Anyways, we're about to run out of time, guys. But we do have a couple of Twitter questions that were sent in to us. I'm just going to read them off, and Ratmiss and Josh, feel free to comment on them if you wish. One comes to us from AS Please, and he says, I felt that same betrayal after my diagnosis at 18, but it's not bothering me anymore. I didn't even go through with official procedure to get the help. I still have a lot of work ahead of me, also because I am involved in almost every addictive behavior possible. I'm not sure what he's referring to in respect to betrayal. The question was sent in 13 minutes ago. So we were probably talking about Rheathor. Was it something in respect to being diagnosed but not getting the help that you needed because of it?
Yeah, somebody did say something to that effect. I think it was Rheathor. I was made aware of this and received no help as a child or throughout adolescence, and honestly feel somewhat betrayed because of the diagnosis. Counselors spotted it, but the parents didn't do anything.
Yeah, it was the same case for me, AS Please. I'm sure pretty much anybody that's watching this, I think it's safe to assume a lot of you have watched the very first video on my Truth About Asperger's series, where a lot of people knew that I had AS, even my peers, but nobody ever said anything. I don't know why. We got to make sure that doesn't happen in the future so people can get the resources that they need. Finally, hold on, let me just check to see if we've gotten any super chats. Nope. Okay, so we have one more question from Twitter, and this one comes to us from Border Collie. He spells it Boartter. Do you have any advice on professional networking? I'm studying engineering right now, and my professors often stress the importance of making contacts in the industry. Naturally, this is pretty difficult for someone with social anxiety. Well, this is actually something that I struggle with myself to a degree, but I know John, he's pretty good at this, so I guess because he's been quiet for the last little bit, take the lead.
Okay, sure. The best thing to do is to go into canned environments. So trade shows or conferences where you can go up to booths where the responsibility for talking and projecting is the person who's running the booth.
Yes.
So you can be, you know what I'm saying? So you don't have to do that delivery. You can listen to that delivery. You can ask pointed questions. People at the booth are trying to make a point or tell you something or get you to join their outfit. So they have got the responsibility for leading conversation. It's a great way to network because every so often you'll meet someone that something will click with. So that's one point. Go to the canned environments. The other thing that's critical about networking is don't try to network with everybody all at once. That will make you crazy. That will just make you crazy. So talking to somebody who looks over your shoulder while they're seeing who else they should talk to is horrible and insulting. So what you do is in any of these environments, you talk to a person and you listen to that person respectfully. So you kind of make the conversation local and small and tight. And that's like the canned environment. But if you're milling about over wine and cheese and stuff, you talk to one or two persons at a time.
Yeah. Yeah, that's definitely a good point, especially the fact that they're the ones that are supposed to be selling something to you, and
That's right.
If you have a resume with a whole bunch of experience on it that you can present to them, they'll often when you're at these trade shows, at least the ones that I've gone to, they'll be like, "Hey, do you have a resume with you?" And I'm like, "Yeah, I do," and they look at it and then they sort of go into greater detail about what their organization's all about, what they're sort of looking for in an employee, and then. Like John said, just go up to a few people. You don't have to entertain all of them and try to pick out the best options for you. So,
may I also add in a point because regards to Okay, well, obviously, as I said, I went to music uni, so I got to network with quite a lot of people, and really, what networking is, in my experience anyway, it's building a web of people with the skills that you want. If skills that you want them to deliver for whatever it is that you so wish to bring into being. Be old Jordan Peterson about it,
Yeah.
Anyway, yeah.
That's a good impression.
Thank you. Yeah. Anyway, so and in my experience, anyway, that can treat conversations with them like you're treating an old friend, and I can speak from experience from this. Sooner or later, it will be. The friends I've made from uni are absolutely wonderful people, and I am proud to call them my friends.
Great. Before we sign off, I just wanted to ask you, what type of music are you into?
As I said, death metal, but really I've been listening to a lot of stuff like Paradise Lost and Typo Negative recently, so all that good stuff, all the stuff that makes you want to dress in black.
Cut off goat heads and put them on pikes.
Only on the weekends. I mean, who has time for all that?
Yeah, on a Tuesday, yeah, no, that's more like when I sacrifice a lamb on the altar of Baal or something. That's
more like throw it on the grill.
Or throw it on the grill. Yeah. For the record, I don't listen to death metal, but I am sort of aware of the culture tangentially because when I was in high school, that was sort of what my friends were into. But more power to you, dude. Yeah. I'm glad to hear that things are going well for you. Ratmus, did you have anything to say before we conclude?
No.
Well, I saw in the chat that you're plugging your YouTube channel. Did you want to tell people about that?
If you are interested, you can check it. I make Finnish fan dubs there, and it gets me relaxed. It's a nice hobby.
Good. I'm glad to hear that works. That works out for you and helping you get relaxed. If you guys want to check that out, if you're watching this pre-recorded afterwards, just look in the live chat because the live chat is there's a playback of it. Just look for Ratmiss's name, click on her name, go to her channel. Anyways, ladies and gentlemen, that'll do it for this episode of the Differently Wired Show. Thank you so very much for joining us. Before we conclude, I just want to remind you guys that if you want to be a part of our mailbag segment, make sure to send in your emails anytime to maxderrat@yahoo.ca. And also, if you want to be on the Taking Your Calls segment of the show, make sure that you join our Discord server by clicking on the link in the description box of this video. And also, I just want to remind you, because we did take Twitter questions this time, if you want to be a part of the live show and don't have any money to send in via Super Chat, you can take your chances, depending on whether or not we have enough time, by sending in your question using the hashtag DifferentlyWired on Twitter. And before we conclude, I also just want to say that if you want to support this channel or this show, there are two ways that you can do that. One way is financially. There's a PayPal link in the description box below. Anything that you submit to us will go right back to this channel and the show in terms of helping us grow. And also, if you don't have much in terms of financial means, the best thing that you guys can do to support this channel is by sharing my videos, whether it's the Differently Wired show videos or any of the ones that I do that aren't related to autism or mental health. And let me tell you guys how much this has helped me. What month are we? Oh yeah, March. We're 3 months into the year so far. At the beginning of this year, I had around 25,000 subscribers, and it was around that time that we actually started this show. As of right now, we're almost about to cross 40,000, which is great. And it's all thanks to you guys sharing around my videos, or our videos, rather. I'm sorry, John.
No worries.
Okay. You know, I honestly, I wouldn't be able to do this show without John. He's the one that does most of the work. It's true.
No, it's not. I do all the work.
Okay, give me some credit, John. Come on.
Okay, some credit.
Here's some credit. I'm not going to substantiate what it is. But anyways, yeah, if you guys could just take my videos and share them around, that's the best thing you can do. And one last thing. If you're watching us live right now, make sure you hit that like button. Honestly, you have no idea how much that helps. It just tells the YouTube algorithm that our content is worth watching, and it passes it around. The exact same thing happened with my most profound moment in gaming video, and that went over 500,000 views. So please continue to do that, especially for this particular show. I want to thank John, as always. Great help. Honestly, I couldn't do this without him.
Thank you, Max.
And thank you so much to Josh and Ratmiss for being our guest today.
Thank you.
It was lovely hearing from you and hearing your stories. And we hope to see you guys all again next week at the exact same time. Until then, stay yellow.
Bye-bye.
Bye.